GEZ is an ancient South Semitic language that originated in the northern region of Ethiopia and Eritrea in the Horn of Africa. It later became the official language of the Kingdom of Aksum and Ethiopian imperial court. Today, GEZ remains only as the main language used in the liturgy of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the Eritrean Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the Ethiopian Catholic Church, and the Beta Israel Jewish community. However, in Ethiopia Amharic or other local languages, and in Eritrea and Tigray region in Ethiopia, Tigrigna may be used for sermons. Tigrigna and Tigray are closely related to GEZ, with at least 4 different configurations proposed. Some linguists do not believe that GEZ constitutes the common ancestor of modern Ethiopian languages, but that GEZ became a separate language early on from some hypothetical, completely unattested language, and can thus be seen as an extinct sister language of Tigray and Tigrinya. The foremost Ethiopian experts such as Amsalu Aklilu point to the vast proportion of inherited nouns that are unchanged, and even spelled identically in both GEZ and Amharic. Phonology. Vowels of a less than Proto-Semitic asterisk later e, u less than Proto-Semitic asterisk u, I less than Proto-Semitic asterisk I, a less than Proto-Semitic asterisk later a, e less than Proto-Semitic asterisk I less than Proto-Semitic asterisk I asterisk u, o less than Proto-Semitic asterisk or, also transliterated as a, u, I, a, e, I, o. Consonants. The interpretation of the GEZ writing system. GEZ is transliterated according to the following system. Because GEZ is no longer a spoken language, the pronunciation of some consonants is not completely certain. Gregg writes, the consonants corresponding to the graphemes S and E have merged respectively with per second and per second in the phonological system, represented by the traditional pronunciation, and indeed in all modern Ethiopian Semitic. There is, however, no evidence either in the tradition or in Ethiopian Semitic for what value these consonants may have had in GEZ. A similar problem is found for the consonant transliterated H. Gregg notes that it corresponds in etymology to velar or uvular fricatives in other Semitic languages, but it was pronounced exactly the same as H in the traditional pronunciation, though the use of a different letter shows that it must originally have had some other pronunciation. What that pronunciation was is not certain. The chart below lists L and L as possible values for GEZ and GEZ respectively. It also lists Chi as a possible value for. These values are tentative, but based on the Proto-Semitic consonants that they are descended from. Phonemes of GEZ in the chart below. IPA values are shown. When transcription is different from the IPA, the character is shown in angular brackets. Question marks follow phonemes whose interpretation is controversial. In GEZ, emphatic consonants are phonetically ejectives. As is the case with Arabic, emphatic velars may actually be phonetically uvular. GEZ consonants in relation to Proto-Semitic GEZ consonants have a triple opposition between voiceless, voiced, and ejective, obstruents. The Proto-Semitic emphasis in GEZ has been generalized to include emphatic P. GEZ has phonologized labia velars, descending from Proto-Semitic biphonemes. GEZ's sort is reconstructed as descended from a Proto-Semitic voiceless lateral fricative L. Like Arabic, GEZ merged Proto-Semitic S and S in. Apart from this, GEZ phonology is comparably conservative. The only other Proto-Semitic phonological contrasts lost may be the interdental fricatives and Ghanaian morphology. Nouns GEEZ distinguishes two genders, masculine and feminine, which in certain words is marked with the suffix t. These are less strongly distinguished than in other Semitic languages, in that many nouns not denoting persons can be used in either gender. In translated Christian texts there is a tendency for nouns to follow the gender of the noun with a corresponding meaning in Greek. There are two numbers, singular and plural. The plural can be constructed either by suffixing it to a word, or by internal plural. Plural using suffix amit, amatit, year, mayit, water. Internal plural, better bayat, house, houses, keneb, naranet, eyelid, eyelids. Nouns also have two cases, the nominative which is not marked and the accusative which is marked with final a. Internal plurals follow certain patterns. Triconsonantal nouns follow one of the following patterns. Quadriconsonantal and some triconsonantal nouns follow the following pattern. Triconsonantal nouns that take this pattern must have at least one long vowel pronominal morphology verb conjugation syntax. Noun phrases have the following overall order. Noun, adjectives and determiners agree with the noun in gender and number. Relative clauses are introduced by a pronoun which agrees in gender and number with the preceding noun. As in many Semitic languages, possession by a noun phrase is shown through the construct state. In GEZ, this is formed by suffixing a to the possessed noun, which is followed by the possessor, as in the following examples. Possession by a pronoun is indicated by a suffix on the possessed noun, as seen in the following table. The following examples show a few nouns with pronominal possessors. Another common way of indicating possession by a noun phrase combines the pronominal suffix on a noun with the possessor preceded by the preposition la equals to. 4. Lambden notes that in comparison to the construct state, this kind of possession is only possible when the possessor is definite and specific. Lambden also notes that the construct state is the unmarked form of possession in GEZ. Prepositional phrases. GEZ is a prepositional language, as in the following example. There are three special prepositions, bar equals, in, with, la equals, to, for, equals, from, which always appear as enclitics on the following noun, as in the following examples. These enclitic prepositions in GEZ are similar to the inseparable prepositions in Hebrew sentences. The normal word order for declarative sentences is VSO. Objects of verbs show accusative case marked with the suffix a. Questions with a WH word show the question word at the beginning of the sentence. Negation. The common way of negation is the prefix I, which descends from I from Proto-Semitic *al by palatalization. It is prefixed to verbs as follows. Writing system. GEZ is written with Ethiopic or the GEZ abugida, a script that was originally developed specifically for this language. In languages that use it, such as Amharic and Tigrinya, the script is called Fidal, which means script or alphabet. GEZ is read from left to right. The GEZ script has been adapted to write other languages, usually ones that are also Semitic. The most widespread use is for Amharic in Ethiopia and Tigrinya in Eritrea and Ethiopia. It is also used for Sabatbiat, Mien, Aju and most other languages of Ethiopia. In Eritrea it is used for Tigra, and it is often used for Bilan, a Cushitic language. Some other languages in the Horn of Africa, such as Oromo, used to be written using GEZ but have switched to Latin-based alphabets. It also uses 4 symbols for labialized velar consonants, which are variants of the non-labialized velar consonants. History and literature. Although it is often said that GEZ literature is dominated by the Bible, including the Deuterocanon, in fact there are many medieval and early modern original texts in the language. Most of its important works are also the literature of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which include Christian liturgy, lives of saints, and patristic literature. For instance, around 200 texts were written about indigenous Ethiopian saints from the 14th through the 19th century. This religious orientation of GEZ literature was a result of traditional education being the responsibility of priests and monks. The Church thus constituted the custodian of the nation's culture, notes Richard Pankhurst, and describes the traditional education as follows. Traditional education was largely biblical. It began with the learning of the alphabet, or more properly, syllabary. The student's second grade comprised the memorization of the first chapter of the first epistle general of St. John in Gs. The study of writing would probably also begin at this time, and particularly in more modern times some arithmetic might be added. In the third stage the Acts of the Apostles were studied, while certain prayers were also learnt, and writing and arithmetic continued. The fourth stage began with the study of the Psalms of David and was considered an important landmark in a child's education, being celebrated by the parents with a feast to which the teacher, father confessor, relatives and neighbors were invited. A boy who had reached this stage would moreover usually be able to write, and might act as a letter writer. However, works of history and chronography, ecclesiastical and civil law, philology, medicine, and letters were also written in GEZ. The Ethiopian collection in the British Library comprises some 800 manuscripts dating from the 15th to the 20th centuries, notably including magical and divinatory scrolls, and illuminated manuscripts of the 16th to 17th centuries. It was initiated by a donation of 74 codices by the Church of England Missionary Society in the 1830s and 1840s, and substantially expanded by 349 codices, stolen by the British from the Emperor Tewodros II's capital at Magdala in the 1868 expedition to Abyssinia. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City has at least 2 illuminated manuscripts in GEZ. Origins. The GEZ language is classified as a South Semitic language. It evolved from an earlier Proto-Ethio-Semitic ancestor used to write royal inscriptions of the Kingdom of D. Mount in epigraphic South Arabian. The GEZ language is no longer universally thought of, as previously assumed, to be an offshoot of Sabian or Old South Arabian, and there is some linguistic evidence of Semitic languages being spoken in Eritrea and Ethiopia since approximately 2000 BC. However, the GEZ script later replaced epigraphic South Arabian in the Kingdom of Aksum. Epigraphic South Arabian letters were used for a few inscriptions into the 8th century, though not any South Arabian language since D. Mount. Early inscriptions in GEZ and GEZ script have been dated to as early as the 5th century BC, and in a sort of Proto-GEZ written in ESA since the 9th century BC. GEZ literature properly begins with the Christianization of Ethiopia in the 4th century, during the reign of Ezana of Aksum. 5th to 7th centuries. The oldest known example of the old GEZ script is found on the Horalti obelisk in Matara, Eritrea. The oldest surviving GEZ manuscript is thought to be the 5th or 6th century Garima Gospels. Almost all texts from this early, Aksumite, period are religious in nature, many of them translations from Greek, Syriac, Coptic, and later also Arabic. The translation of the Christian Bible was undertaken by Syrian monks known as the Nine Saints, who had come to Ethiopia in the 5th century fleeing the Byzantine persecution of the Monophysites. The Ethiopic Bible contains 81 books, 46 of the Old Testament and 35 of the New. A number of these books are called deuterocanonical, such as the Ascension of Isaiah, Jubilees, Enoch, the Paralipomena of Baruch, Noah, Ezra, Nehemiah, Maccabees, and Tobit. The Book of Enoch in particular is notable since its complete text has survived in no other language. Also to this early period dates Kerlos, a collection of Christological writings beginning with the Treatise of Saint Cyril. These works are the theological foundation of the Ethiopic Church. Another important religious document is Serata Panemus, a translation of the monastic rules of Pachomius. Non-religious works translated in this period include Physiologus, a work of natural history also very popular in Europe, 13th to 14th centuries after the decline of the Axumites. A lengthy gap follows. No works have survived that can be dated to the years of the 8th through 12th centuries. Only with the rise of the Solomonic dynasty around 1270 can we find evidence of authors committing their works to writings. Some writers consider the period beginning from the 14th century an actual golden age of Ge'ez literature, although by this time Ge'ez was no longer a living language. While there is ample evidence that it had been replaced by the Amharic language in the south and by the Tigrinya and Tigra languages in the north, Ge'ez remained in use as the official written language until the 19th century, its status comparable to that of medieval Latin in Europe. Important hagiographies from this period include the Gadol Samoatar Acts of the Martyrs, the Gadol Hawayat Acts of the Apostles, the Senkasar or Synaxarium, translated as the Book of the Saints of the Ethiopian Church. Other lives of Saint Anthony, Saint George, Saint Ekel Haymanot, Saint Gabra Manfas Kedis. Also at this time the Apostolic Constitutions was translated in Ge'ez, which provided another set of instructions and laws for the Ethiopian Church. Another translation from this period is Zena Ehud, a translation of Joseph Ben-Gurion's History of the Jews, written in Hebrew in the 10th century, which covers the period from the captivity to the capture of Jerusalem by Titus. Apart from theological works, the earliest contemporary royal chronicles of Ethiopia date to the reign of Amdacian with the appearance of the victory songs of Amdacian. This period also marks the beginning of Amharic literature. The 14th century Kebra Nagistor, Glory of the Kings by the Nebuchad Yeshak of Aksum is among the most significant works of Ethiopian literature, combining history, allegory and symbolism in a retelling of the story of the Queen of Sheba, King Solomon, and their son Menelik I of Ethiopia. Another work that began to take shape in this period is the Mashafer Aksum or Book of Aksum. 15th to 16th centuries. The early 15th century Fekari Isis, the explication of Jesus, contained a prophecy of a king called Tewodros, which rose to importance in 19th century Ethiopia as Tewodros II chose this throne name. Literature flourished especially during the reign of Emperor Zara Yaakov. Written by the emperor himself were Matsafe Burhan and Matsafe Millard. Numerous homilies were written in this period, notably Ritera Hymenot ascribed to John Chrysostom. Also of monumental importance was the appearance of the Ge'ez translation of the Feather Negist, thought to have been around 1450, and ascribed to one Petros Abda Said, that was later to function as the supreme law for Ethiopia, until it was replaced by a modern constitution in 1931. By the beginning of the 16th century, the Islamic invasions put an end to the flourishing of Ethiopian literature. A letter of Abba Enbaum to Imam Ahmad ibn Ibrahim, entitled Ankar Saramin, giving his reasons for abandoning Islam, although probably first written in Arabic and later rewritten in an expanded Ge'ez version around 1532. Is considered one of the classics of later Ge'ez literature. During this period, Ethiopian writers begin to address differences between the Ethiopian and the Roman Catholic Church in such works as the Confession of Emperor Gelorgius, Sawana Nafs, Fekari Malakot and Haymanot Abaw. Around the year 1600, a number of works were translated from Arabic into Ge'ez for the first time, including the Chronicle of John of Nikiu and the Universal History of Jijiz ibn al-Amid Abi al-Wazir. Current usage in Eritrea, Ethiopia and Israel. Ge'ez is the liturgical language of Ethiopian Orthodox, Eritrean Orthodox, Ethiopian Catholic and Eritrean Catholic Christians, and is used in prayer and in scheduled public celebrations. It is also used liturgically by the Beta Israel. The liturgical rite used by the Christian churches is referred to as the Ethiopic rite or the Ge'ez rite. Sample: the first sentence of the Book of Enoch.